Friends, it's day 759 of the unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine, and we already know enough details of the mass shooting which took place in Moscow this Friday to be able to make conclusions. Yesterday, 4 gunmen entered the Crocus City Hall in Moscow and opened fire, killing numerous civilians. Later, they set the building on fire and escaped, evading the Russian police, which arrived approximately 1 hour later. Also, yesterday, the terrorist organization Islamic State published a video with the gunmen all wearing matching clothes, basically same as on the posters published by the FSB. According to the given information, the terrorists planned to attack a big crowd of Christians. The ISIS specifically stated that the terrorist act had been conducted because of the so-called war on Islam. Earlier this month, the US passed the information about a preparing terrorist act to the Russians. Also, several countries via their embassies called their citizens to avoid visiting Russia due to the possible attacks against large crowds. As a response, on 19th of May, the Russian dictator Putin, broadly known around the world as Huilo, officially stated that the Western claims about the possible terrorist attacks in Russia were nothing more than a blackmail and attempts to scare and destabilize Russian society. To all the Putin's little fans out there, this again demonstrates just how much damns he actually gives about his society, his voters, and the future of Russia in general. Shortly after the attack, the terrorists were apprehended in Bryansk Oblast of Russia, bordering Belarus and Ukraine. The arrest didn't take a lot of time because Russians, sure enough, had plenty of details on the ISIS terrorists provided to the Russians by the US intelligence. As soon as the terrorists got captured and identified, both Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and Russia's ambassador in Belarus Dmitry Krutoy made 2 controversial statements. The ambassador in his interview shared details on the cooperation between the Russian and Belarusian security services, who made sure to stop the escaping terrorists from entering the Belarusian territory. At the same time, Putin stated that the terrorists planned to enter the Ukrainian territory, where a so-called escape window has been prepared for them. Question is, prepared by whom? Russian border guards, knowing Putin's passion for windows? Anyways, which version is true and where exactly did the terrorists attempt to go to, Belarus or Ukraine? Logically, you can easily cross Belarusian border from Russia. It's much safer than going to the heavily protected Russo-Ukrainian border with several lines of extremely vigilant, in-depth checks, maximum security, and numerous Russian law enforcement agencies catching Ukrainian spies and Russian weapon smugglers. But that's exactly what the Russian propagandists want you to believe now. According to the official Russian statements, the ISIS is basically fighting for Ukraine as its faithful ally. And in order to convince you that it's true, Kremlin already involved its speakers such as Margarita Simonyan, who blamed the US and Ukraine for the ISIS attack because they knew, and if they knew, they must have planned all this. Beautiful logic. Among the pro-Russian propagandists on the West, Douglas MacGregor also attempted to combine this attack with the Ukrainian defenders. According to this individual, the perpetrators of the terrorist attack in Russia escaped from Russia into Ukraine near Belgorod and are directly tied to Muslim elements fighting on behalf of Ukraine. Unfortunately, due to the poor knowledge of geography, he missed the fact that Belgorod and Bryansk are 2 completely different Russian regions. Also, he did not provide us with the information which exactly Muslim elements of ISIS directly fight for Ukraine. I would like to know that myself. Different pro-Russian sources on Twitter were also involved into spreading this misinformation, but we all already know that Twitter turned into the biggest Russian platform since Russia Today. And that's basically all you need to know. That ISIS attacked but Ukraine is bad, because the imagination of the Russian propagandists has no borders. Just to remind you, Russians are proud creators of such memes as American biolabs, genetically modified ducks, combat mosquitoes, military American locust, Ukrainian Nazi, Western warmongers, Zelensky's castles, and many, many more. I have no doubt that soon we will learn that the terrorists had connections with the Ukrainian Minister of Defense because he's a Muslim, which doesn't stop him from being a white Nazi, of course, according to the Russian propagandists. As of this moment, we have clear evidence that at least one of the terrorists was tortured. The Russian propagandist Yegor Guzenko published a video showing the Russian terrorists capturing the ISIS terrorist and cutting his ear. Another Russian propagandist, Andrei Rudenko, brags about this approach and openly says that these are not the last terrorists who will lose their ears. Because Russian terrorists are widely known for being extremely atrocious, it is possible that soon we will hear all kinds of stories from the tortured ISIS terrorists about their connections to Ukraine, Azov, Satanists, and possibly Americans. Of course, Russians have obvious reasons to connect ISIS and Ukraine, the two worlds that never intersected in history. Russians need to demonize Ukrainians, distract their people's attention from the horrible situation with the destroyed Russian refineries, as well as the situation in Belgorod, where the Russian freedom fighters keep fighting against the Russian regime. And just like in 1999, Putin needs new mobilization because he already lost around 500,000 invaders who died in the failing invasion of Ukraine. With that, I wish you all a beautiful day. Please leave your thoughts in the commentaries. My friends, I'm Operator Starsky. As always, be safe.